Before Abraham became the father of Ishmael and Isaac, he dwelled between the two rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates. The place he resided has given us a peek into the past, and the people he lived amongst have raised their voices to reveal a secret through the discovery of an ancient artifact from Abraham's hometown of Ur in biblical Iraq. For as long as I can remember, I've always been a guy interested in going beyond borders. It seems that when I do, I often learn something new. For example, when I was in Saudi Arabia, I found myself in front of the altar of the golden calf after climbing the real Mount Sinai, and there was a man-made border that wanted to keep me out. Take a peek at what I did. Well, folks, we've come all the way here. We have been to the top. We have been to Elijah's cave. We have been to the split rock. Now we want to take you to the place where the golden calf was whatever you want to call it. But it says that it is unlawful. And actually, there's been very serious situations as a result of that. In fact, they have a fence all the way around. Let's just take a look over here. If you know anything about me, blocks don't mean much. I have had a blast, but I want to take you inside. Let's go. It was an awesome adventure to be in Saudi Arabia, climbing, hiking, and even crawling. But the older that I get, I'm trying to learn to play by the rules, especially when it requires wiggling under fences. What I did learn from my visit to that ancient altar was that the Israelites sadly fell prey to the religious practices of Egyptians, who worshipped many gods, like the golden calf they wanted Aaron to craft. Even though they had seen the hand of the one true God who brought them out of Egypt, the false gods of Egypt were deeply embedded in their psyche. It would take decades to shift both their thinking and their actions away from their cultural and religious experiences in Egypt. As it pertains to the culture and religion Abraham came from, I'm recommending another biblical archaeology episode by my friends over at Inspiring Philosophy. They do such a good job of going into depth on these important matters. I will provide the link in the description. I, on the other hand, want to take you back inside the British Museum and to ancient Ur to focus on Abraham's secret. When I was inside the British Museum, I kept coming across rooms that had barriers that I guess were meant to keep people like me and my trusty camera out. But I was only in London for a day and I needed to get in to see what the Brits took back from their discoveries inside biblical Iraq. For example, the room I found my way into had artifacts from ancient Levant, biblical Iraq. Eventually, I walked through that closed room and came into an opened room that spilled the beans on Abraham's secret. I had found the room that displayed amazing artifacts uncovered at ancient Ur. As I was searching for some background information about the archaeology done here, I found a great video about how these artifacts ended up inside the British Museum. The pictures are a little old and the video quality is not great, but the information is really important. So take a look with me.
3,300 years before the construction of the pyramids of ancient Egypt, Ur was already occupied. The modern name of the ancient site of Ur is Tel al-Mukayyar, which in Arabic means mound of pitch. The name comes from the monumental temple tower, which was made of baked mud bricks set into bitumen or pitch, a naturally occurring form of tar. In 1922, under the leadership of the little-known young archaeologist Charles Leonard Woolley, excavations jointly sponsored by the University of Pennsylvania Museum and the British Museum were initiated at the site of ancient Ur. The decision to excavate proved to be a fateful one. Perhaps no excavation in the more than 150 years of archaeological work in Mesopotamia has excited as much public interest as Woolley's work at ancient Ur. Woolley's excavations competed only with Howard Carter's discovery of the intact tomb of the boy pharaoh Tutankhamun for public attention. As a result of the extensive publicity, tourists from all parts of the globe, including European royalty and the author Agatha Christie, flocked to the remote site in the Iraqi desert. The artifacts which Woolley uncovered in his excavations at Ur were divided among the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, the University of Pennsylvania Museum, and the British Museum.
As I was doing my best to get some good footage of what was brought back from Ur, I was having a problem with the glass cases causing a reflection, and there were just too many people getting in my way for me to even stop, and too much noise to give you my commentary. So I just kept walking with the camera rolling. I may not have been clear in the previous episode titled Noah's Diary. Did I mention that I took my trip to biblical Iraq before traveling to unpack some of the artifacts housed at the British Museum in London? When I came to this picture of the famous ziggurat at Ur, I started daydreaming about what it was like to be back there. So there's been a question, a pretty important one. Why would I come to this place? What is it about this place that would draw me, may I say that would inspire me at this time in history to come here? Well, I'm about to show you. I cannot express what it felt like to be meandering in a museum, looking at ancient artifacts that were pulled out of the very ground I had just been walking on in Abraham's hometown. Come and take a walk with me and my guide at Ur. Well, I am a bit excited right now because I have my friend who has taken me to the place that is just absolutely amazing. Where are we?
We're in Ur of the Chaldeans.
Ur of the Chaldeans, and we just went into a temple structure of some sort.
A temple structure that has what's thought to be the longest standing arch in history.
Wow. And then the other thing is, of course, this is where the great ziggurat is, right?
Yes,
Ziggurat?
The ziggurat of Ur.
The ziggurat of Ur, and it's old.
More than 5,000, 4,000 years ago.
So I am here. You are here. We are all here together, and this is just, I have to say, this is amazing.
And this is a palace. Right in this place. So, this is the Shulgi Palace. Shulgi is the name of the king from the Sumerians. As you see the structure, you're gonna notice something is that between the bricks there is a lot of tar. And this is what's called in Arabic al-gir, which comes from a place in Iraq that is called heat. They bring this from the west of Iraq all the way to the south of Iraq using boats, because the Tigris used to come right here. So they bring it using the boats and then use it to build here.
Wow.
That's why the literal translation for this, the name of this place in the local language, would be the Hill of Tar.
The Hill of Tar. It was so satisfying to be walking in Ur with my Bible in hand on my way to the very spot that uncovered an ancient artifact that revealed Abraham's secret. I had to climb up a wall and reach over the high fence to get some good footage of the site, but it was well worth the effort. In Genesis chapter 22, there is a very interesting story about Abraham being commanded to offer his son Isaac as a human sacrifice. Let's read it. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. And he split wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. I always wondered why Abraham didn't raise an objection when he was commanded to offer his son as a sacrifice. It was as if Abraham was expecting the request or possibly even comfortable with the command. Let's keep reading. Genesis 22:9. Then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood and bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not stretch out your hand against the lad and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. The royal cemetery in Abraham's hometown of Ur uncovered what archaeologists called the death pits, where the practice of human sacrifice took place. Take a look.
One of the most important parts of the ancient city was the temple complex of the moon god Nana, at the center of which was a ziggurat. This monument is not a pyramid like those found in Egypt. It is a series of stepped terraces with a temple on top. Woolley's recovery of Ur's ancient ziggurat and the complex of buildings around it was a remarkable find, but it paled in comparison with his discovery of the tombs of Ur's early kings and queens in 1927. Between 1927 and 1934, he uncovered 1,850 of the tombs. 16 tombs stood apart from the others. Each contained an extraordinary wealth of artifacts and evidence of human sacrifices. Woolley called them royal tombs because he assumed they contained Ur's deceased kings. Woolley recognized considerable variations in the royal tombs. Tombs PG 789 and PG 800 typified Ur's early dynastic royal tombs. Most of the important artifacts you see in the exhibition come from those two royal burials. PG 800 contained the body of a woman just under 5 feet tall and roughly 40 at the time of her death, whom Woolley identified as Queen Puabi. The body was adorned with an elaborate headdress. Several layers of gold ribbons, gold leaves, and wreaths of gold, lapis lazuli, and carnelian are all topped by a gold comb with flowers on the end. The whole of the upper body was covered with beads of gold, silver, lapis, carnelian, and agate, which Woolley thought to be the remains of a beaded cloak. Among Puabi's other jewelry was an elaborate gold belt with gold rings dangling from strings of lapis, carnelian, and gold beads. On Puabi's fingers were 10 gold rings, and around her right knee was a garter. One of 3 cylinder seals had an inscription that identified the deceased as Puabi, the queen. At the southwest end of PG 800's death pit lay the bodies of 13 women. The women, all of whom wore elaborate headdresses, had apparently been in 2 rows facing each other. Musical instruments were found with them. PG 789 and PG 800 provided the foundation for Woolley's accounts of what had happened at the death of Ur's kings and queens. Each man brought a little cup of clay or stone or metal, the only equipment required for the rite that was to follow. There must have been some kind of service at the bottom of the shaft. At least it is evident that the musicians played up to the last and that each drank from the cup. Either they brought the potion with them, or they found it prepared for them on the spot, and they composed themselves for death. This coil of metal is actually a silver hair ribbon that was found not on her head, but still held in the hand of a young girl. Woolley thought she might have been late getting ready for the death pit ritual, and so rushed to the cemetery with the ribbon in hand instead of on her head.
Now let's keep reading the passage with this important contextual information about the culture and religion of Abraham's hometown of Ur in mind. Verse 13. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide," as it is said to this day, "In the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." One of the most amazing discoveries was, I tell you, hang on. Let the folks who I just introduced you to with the previous video explain this fantastic find for us.
Each of the 4 panels depicts animals doing things that humans do, or fantastic animals with human heads. One of the most famous objects from the whole cemetery features a goat. The ram in the thicket statue is spectacular. It is made of gold, silver, copper, lapis lazuli, red limestone, and bitumen. An engraved picture on a cylinder seal from Mesopotamia shows just such a statue being used as a table.
When I was in the museum, I was stunned to see this artifact the archaeologists named a ram in the thicket. This is when I wondered if Abraham had a secret. Is it possible that the polytheistic culture and religion Abraham came from was being put to the test to see if he had transitioned to trusting his newfound monotheistic belief? By canceling human sacrifice and substituting it with a real ram in a thicket, instead of promoting animal worship, which was prevalent in Ur, seems to be more than a coincidence, and maybe even a secret. These practices were embedded in Abraham's culture and religious DNA before he ever left biblical Iraq. By the time he made it to the promised land, he was transformed and passed the test. Now, while you unpack this secret fact, can I show you something else that was in the same case with the ram in the thicket? It is called the Standard of Ur. This is a full-color collage that shows the activities of the community who lived, worked, and worshiped in Abraham's hometown. One more thing that really got me jazzed was musical instruments that were found in the royal death pits. Take a look.
Written documents and pictures suggest that music and dancing were almost as common in rituals and festivals as were eating and drinking. We may never have known that the royal tombs contained these musical instruments if Sir Leonard Woolley had not used such inventive excavation methods as he did. The basic form of all the lyres was made out of wood, which decays over time. Woolley preserved the shape and size of each lyre by filling the spaces left by the decayed wood with wax and plaster. Because of the work he did, and because of the depictions on the instruments themselves, we know what most of these lyres originally looked like. Many of the lyres were decorated with shaped animal heads like this one. The shape was made of wood, and then gold was pounded into a very thin sheet and attached to the wood with bitumen or pitch.
Just as I was wrapping up my visit to Abraham's hometown, a group of Iraqis stopped by and brought their own musician. Let's take a quick listen while you think about the substitute that showed up to step in for Isaac being a sacrifice at the hand of his daddy.
مرت حلوة بدرب مرور بحر العين الخد زهور 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 شلال الشعر المنثور يتمايل على الطرفاني شلال الشعر المنثور يتمايل على الطرفاني لقعد لك على درب اقعد حلوة يما عيون السود لقعد لك على درب اقعد حلوة يما عيون السود اصعد واقطع لك عنقود ووردة من البستاني اصعد واقطع لك عنقود ووردة من البستاني.
I hope you enjoyed that because I sure did. The Iraq Unpacked Plus episode is titled The Abraham Discords, that addresses the modern-day schism that exists between Abraham's seed that now spans the entire Middle East. You can watch it right now along with some other sensitive events episodes inside the Academy Premium Content Library at bfainternational.com. I hope to see you there. Oh, and be sure to like, comment, and share if you dare so that I can keep you up to date about what is coming next from the Biblical Iraq Unpacked series. Oh, and one more thing. I found the grandson of the first man who helped British archaeologist Leonard Woolley excavate the site of the ziggurat. He wanted to take me to Abraham's house. I've decided to let you in on this short adventure in a bonus episode titled Abraham's Apartment Complex. Take a look and a listen.